A train glides silently over a railway bridge bathed in the colors of a peaceful sunset. Inside, the subway car is completely packed, and a man in a suit holds onto the strap, letting out a heavy sigh that betrays his extreme exhaustion after yet another endless day. In that moment, he feels that the fatigue could simply consume him if he keeps up that pace. The loudspeaker announces the arrival at the busy Yeouido station, and the crowd begins to push without ceremony to get off in time. Irritated by the lack of manners around him, the young man suddenly widens his eyes. Amid all that chaos, a single seat remains empty. Without hesitation, he throws himself into the spot, clutches his briefcase to his chest, and feels immense relief at finally being able to rest his legs. This exhausted man goes by the name O. Heyman, is only 33 years old, and has always been treated as a child prodigy, graduated at the top of his class, promoted early to manager. Whenever a company project got stuck, the executive solution was always the same: throw the problem into the hands of O. Heyman, the employee capable of solving the impossible. But behind that reputation, he lived in absolute silence, worn down by a merciless routine, 3 straight months of overtime that exceeded any human limit. His eyelids, heavy with accumulated sleep debt, finally give in. He wakes up startled, certain that he only dozed off for a second and missed his stop. But what he finds above him is not the metal ceiling of the train, but an open blue sky. Confused, he realizes he is surrounded by the stone walls of an immense canyon, sitting on a stone throne inside a cave. Down below, a crowd of small green creatures begins to scream in ecstasy, some crying with emotion and raising their arms, one of them even turning cartwheels out of sheer happiness. Paralyzed, he rubs his eyes, trying to understand whether this is an absurd dream or whether he has finally gone mad from working too much. Looking closely at those pointed ears and the bright green skin, he immediately recognizes them. They are goblins, exactly like the ones from any classic game. Trying to hide the terror inside him, he keeps a firm posture when one of the goblins bows and announces that their lord has finally returned. The entire group cries of joy, celebrating the return of their great leader. Shocked to realize that the creatures speak his language with perfect fluency, he wonders terrified whether they are really referring to him as the new ruler of that place. A baby goblin runs up the stone steps to the throne, carrying in its little hands a round, spiky fruit, offering it with an irresistibly cute expression. O. Heyman holds the unknown food with suspicion, feeling under the peel a strange pulsing, as if something alive were throbbing inside it. Cornered by the anxious looks around him, and not wanting to seem like the villain of the story by refusing a baby's gift, his stomach growls loudly, reminding him that his last real meal had been a hurried snack from a convenience store. Determined to take the risk, he bites into the fruit firmly. The taste catches him completely by surprise. It is without a doubt the most delicious thing he has ever tasted. The goblins burst into celebration upon seeing their new lord approve of the offering, and he can hardly understand so much celebration over a simple fruit picked right there. But the euphoria doesn't last long. A sharp pain makes him clench his teeth, his legs give out, and he collapses to his knees in front of the little goblin, certain that he has just been poisoned. It is then that a blue holographic panel appears out of nowhere, floating before him, displaying his personal data and a countdown to something called Territorial combat. Unable to look away from that projection, he watches numbers in Korean scrolling endlessly on the screen, growing more and more apprehensive. Before he can formulate the question, the interface already announces that it will answer, introducing itself as Wiki, the system capable of reading his thoughts. Wiki explains that this is a total confrontation, in which everything must be used to protect the territory and its people. Out of patience for long explanations, Oh Hae-min cuts the conversation short and demands to know where he is and why he ended up there, since seconds before he had been inside the subway. Without beating around the bush, Wiki reveals that this place is the feared Demon Realm, but that the exact location remains locked due to the territory's level being too low. The news throws him into a silent despair that takes over the entire cave. Unsatisfied with the short answer, he demands a more complete report and receives the same cold justification about the insufficient level. He then asks how he can get back home and hears once again the same repeated answer. Defeated, he sits back down on the throne, staring into empty space, not knowing what to do. Hoping that all of this is nothing but a nightmare, he pinches his own cheek hard, and the pain confirms without a shadow of a doubt that it is real. Overtaken by a wave of panic, he takes a deep breath trying to organize his thoughts until he concludes, stunned, that the system is literally forcing him to lead a real war. Looking more closely at the audience of goblins, he notices how weak and malnourished they look. One of them is so thin you can count every rib. He questions Wiki about how he is supposed to win a battle with soldiers in that state, and what happens if he is defeated. The answer is direct. 99% of the lords who lost this kind of combat ended up dead. He lets out a sarcastic laugh, not quite knowing how to react to yet another piece of terrible news, and concludes, irritated, that his life seems destined to be difficult in any world he falls into. The memory of his days at the company comes to mind: complex projects with no budget, reduced teams, impossible deadlines, and sleepless nights to deliver reports by morning. Risking his own life in the name of hard work, after all, is nothing new to him. Rising from the throne, he asks one last essential question: whether winning the battles and leveling up would allow him to return home. Wiki confirms that yes, it is entirely possible. Without waiting to hear the rest of the warning about the minimal chances of a novice lord winning, Oheimin steps forward, determined. He descends the stone steps toward the goblins, aware that only 4 days remain until the confrontation. Determined to use all the experience accumulated through years of professional sacrifice to create one more miracle, he gazes at the horizon while a small goblin follows close behind him, curious, not understanding what is about to happen. With a confident smile, he announces to the hungry, weakened population that starting that very night, everyone will work without rest. After all, overtime always produces miracles. The stone canyon becomes the stage for a bold defense strategy. He examines the terrain and realizes that the narrow entrance to the cave is perfect for setting up an ambush. He tries to ask the goblins tactical questions, but only receives confused sounds in response. When the system tries to interfere with yet another warning about the territory's low level, Oheimin simply tells Wiki to be quiet. Taking a deep breath, he realizes he will have to teach basic combat techniques to those creatures from scratch. Raising his finger to ask for silence, Oheimin gathers everyone's attention and declares that the only way to survive is to defend that narrow stone passage with everything they have. Rolling up the sleeves of his white shirt, he prepares for a night of hard work. He points to a group of 10 helpers and orders them to go up the mountain to cut down trees roughly the size of an adult goblin. The creatures exchange confused, frightened looks, not quite understanding the order until the leader shouts firmly for them to hurry, and they take off running, intimidated by the new lord's serious tone. He concludes, satisfied, that those little beings react like inexperienced recruits. They only obey after a scolding. Next, he chooses 15 other helpers for the next stage of the plan, gathering as many stones as possible and stacking them at the top of the canyon. While that group climbs the rock wall, Oheimin shows surprising agility, leading the rest in digging a large pit at the main entrance. With no tools available, the goblins dig the earth with their bare hands, and he joins the effort himself, not afraid to get dirty. Night falls quickly, revealing 2 moons shining over that strange world. Huge round stones are arranged at the edge of the canyon. Sharp wooden stakes are prepared as a deadly trap, and a deep pit is finally completed in the middle of the passage. Holding a makeshift spear, the leader praises the effort of all his servants, covered in dirt and with their nails broken from so much digging. It is at this moment that the system activates the overtime skill, granting an energy boost to everyone. He gathers the group for a quick review of the day's work, acknowledging everyone's effort, but warning that the real challenge is only just beginning. He asks his subordinates about the true meaning of working overtime and explains seriously that the secret lies in preparing the battlefield while the enemy sleeps. The sweat shed that night is what will keep them alive in the confrontation. He asks for a brief war cry, just 3 seconds long, to save energy, and the entire cave echoes with the motivated shout of the small warriors. Satisfied, he orders them to grab their weapons and form a battle line, but the result is pure chaos, with the creatures bumping into one another. Oheimin sighs upon realizing that the army's arsenal amounts to nothing more than sharpened stones and rusty knives. He then decides to bet everything on tactics, since the enemies, being goblins as well, shouldn't have have superior weaponry. Victory will come from strategy, not brute force. Remembering valuable advice from a former superior about turning to the classics of the art of war, he thinks about adapting the compact Roman formation to the physical limitations of his people. He tries to organize a straight line by voice commands, but the goblins don't understand and go back to bumping into one another. With no alternative, he starts positioning each one manually, shoulder to shoulder, until forming an aligned shield wall, explaining that each soldier should feel the elbow of the companion beside them. He demonstrates the correct stance, holding the spear firmly with both hands, and teaches the command for advancing together. In the first test, however, one of the warriors trips and falls, groaning in pain while the others just watch. The leader looks at him seriously and orders him to get up, telling the whole group to return to their starting positions. The training repeats without rest all night, and Hyman, with his years of office experience, knows that only constant repetition can beat natural talent. Little by little, he notices changes in the creature's expressions. Tired, with their arms trembling, but still holding their combat stance. He recognizes they're the same exhausted, determined expression of a newly hired employee after having a report rejected by the boss. And because of that, he insists they cannot stop, since that training is their only guarantee of survival. Dawn begins to rise over the mountains, but the attacks continue without mercy. One of the warriors trembles with exhaustion, but forces himself not to fall again. The leader shouts, asking if they think this is a game, and warns that every new mistake will cost 10 extra rounds of punishment. It is then that a gentle, little voice interrupts him, breaking the tension of the training. A baby goblin approaches, visibly hesitant. When calmly asked what worries him so much, the little one trembles and, filled with fear, reveals a painful secret from the past, begging the Lord to hand over some of them as food for the enemies. Shocked by the cruelty of the proposal, Hyman listens as the baby goblin explains that in the past, they always sacrificed 3 young ones to avoid battles, always handing over the weakest and most defenseless so the rest could survive. Gripping the leader's hand tightly, the little one begs for this solution, saying that this way, the new lord would also be safe, forcing a smile through his tears. The other servants lower their heads, filled with shame at that past. The young man's face closes into silent fury as he understands the humiliation his people endured just to survive. He grinds his teeth and asks, indignant, whether they are really proud of surviving by sacrificing their own children? The goblins look away, ashamed. He declares, seriously, that whoever agrees to lose piece by piece ends up with nothing, and swears, loud and clear, that they will fight together with all the strength they have, without giving up even a handful of land or a single child to any invader. He will never again allow anything to be taken from what is under his command. Inspired by the leader's determination, the monsters roar with renewed strength. On the blue panel, the countdown finally reaches 0. The war for the territory officially begins. War cries echo through the mountains as a horde of rival goblins with glowing red eyes charges toward the cave. Hyman and his few warriors stand firm at the entrance of the narrow passage, raising their wooden spears at the leader's calm command, forming a compact barrier. The enemies advance at full speed down the dark path, murderous looks and sharp teeth, with no idea of the trap awaiting them. Confident, the young lord silently challenges them with a smile, watching them carelessly walk right into the path of the trap. Despite the knot in their stomachs at the sight of the advancing crowd, the defenders hold their formation, while the leader orders no one to move until the rivals fall into the pit. At the front line, the first enemies try to stop upon spotting the hole, but are pushed forward by the sheer weight of the horde behind them. The desperate screams for them to stop are lost in the chaos, and one by one, they begin to plummet, piling on top of each other inside the trap. Hyman lets out a laugh upon realizing how low the enemy's tactical intelligence is, convinced that victory already belongs to its people. Down below, the fallen goblins begin fighting among themselves in a desperate attempt to escape first, slipping every time they try to climb the dirt walls, and the leader, with irony, even encourages them to keep struggling. Blinded by greed, those coming from behind keep advancing and fall into the very same pit, making retreat for the enemy army practically impossible from that point on. With the pit completely packed with piled up bodies, Hyman flashes a cold, threatening smile, promising to make every one of the invaders regret despite ever setting foot there, knowing at last that the exact moment to attack has arrived. With a powerful command shout, Ohemen immediately begins the second phase of the plan, ordering the soldiers positioned on the mountains to start dropping huge stones down the canyon. The small warriors atop the cliff push the giant blocks with all their strength, and the first stone strikes an invader who was desperately trying to climb out and flee. Without giving a second's respite, the defenders keep launching the projectiles, crushing dozens of enemies already trapped in the pit. One of the few survivors of the impact watches stunned at the massacre around him, while the rest of the horde tries to retreat in panic, only to discover that the exit is completely blocked by their own group, creating a wave of desperate shoving under the rain of stones. Another invader is struck directly. Ohemen watches satisfied as the rivals become easy targets, trapped in that narrow passage, but notices that his few frontline soldiers are already showing signs of extreme exhaustion. It is at this moment that some enraged survivors decide to launch a final attack. With a confident half smile, knowing that numbers no longer matter, he orders the warriors to brace their spears for close combat and gives the final command to advance. One of the soldiers pierces an opponent's chest with surgical precision, proving the effectiveness of the spear wall against the approaching enemies. Even trembling with fatigue, the warriors keep their weapons steady, following the leader's command to pull back their spears and strike again, eliminating any rival still moving on the ground. He demands that the shield formation remain closed, with no gaps. In the new coordinated advance, the goblins attack in perfect sync, breaking through the enemy's front line and pushing the survivors back into the pit. Terrified by such a well-structured tactic, the invaders retreat, and several end up slipping back into the pit, which quickly turns into a pile of defeated bodies. The entire canyon becomes covered with fallen enemies, the result of the young lord's strategy. Satisfied, Ohemen concludes that the combination of the rain of stones and the spear wall secured the victory, praising the heroic effort of his people who work all night to change their own fate. But his smile fades when he notices something enormous approaching through the dust of battle, a colossal, muscular silhouette, stomping heavily beside one of the trembling small warriors, digging sharp claws into the sandy ground and letting out a roar that makes the very walls of the cave tremble. Wielding a bone club, the creature directly challenges Ohemen to a duel to the death, crouching before leaping with its fist raised, ready to smash the defensive line. The impact of its landing sends chunks of rock flying through the air, and the giant rises, revealing its monstrous stature before the small goblin army. Introducing itself as a giant hobgoblin, the enemy mocks Ohemen's plain appearance, who responds mockingly, saying he recognized it from afar by its unbearable breath. Furious, the giant raises its club, but the young man remains calm and keeps his distance, demanding to know if this is really a direct duel proposal between lords. Faced with the enemy's mocking smile asking if he's afraid, Ohemen simply waves his hand, clarifying that this has nothing to do with cowardice. Irritated by the refusal, the hobgoblin shouts to the whole horde, publicly calling him a coward, and warns that it will finish this quickly so as not to waste any more time. It is then that a giant stone plummets from the top of the mountain and strikes the beast's head directly, making it roar in pain as it holds its skull, complaining about the interruption of its sacred duel. But the first stone is only the beginning. A veritable rain of heavy blocks falls upon the giant, striking it repeatedly until it's completely crushed, with no chance to defend itself. Calmly, Ohemen remarks that what matters, in the end, is securing victory, arguing, with a smile, that it wouldn't make sense to fight a duel that was already won in advance. The holographic panel appears in the air, officially confirming the conquest of the territory. Satisfied at having survived the first great battle, the young lord raises his wooden spear and celebrates together with all his people, while the surviving servants collapse sitting on the ground, overcome with an indescribable relief. The entire cave fills with cries of celebration. Suddenly, among the fallen bodies, a bloodied hand of an enemy soldier moves weakly. The invader tries to rise, coughing blood, but soon feels the tip of a wooden spear pressed against his neck. One of the goblins shouts that he found the surviving rival and asks for permission to eliminate it, and the group begins to surround the prisoner with hate in their eyes, until Ohemen watches the scene closely and orders in a calm, firm voice for everyone to stop the attack immediately. Confused, the soldiers lower their weapons, not understanding why they should spare the threat, and Ohemen questions them about the real advantage of killing that creature. One of the servants argues, irritated, that if they spare the enemy, it will once again become a danger to the territory. Walking calmly up to the kneeling prisoner, the young lord states that he has no intention of executing him at all, explaining that a dead opponent is nothing more than a useless body, while a living one becomes valuable labor for the Territory's tasks. Under the reddish sky of late afternoon covering the Rocky Mountains, Hyman looks over his stone altar, now filled with new subordinates and conquered resources. Opening the system panel to review the gains from the war, he discovers that the Territory has leveled up and that the population now includes 260 new prisoners, along with dried meats, fruits, and pieces of old leather. The group has also unlocked the military drop skill and gained access to new information, among it the revelation that his territory is located on the 12th floor of the realm. Walking down the stone steps with his hands in his pockets, thinking about how to feed so many mouths, he considers the possibility of planting crops, but the system coldly warns that traditional agriculture is not viable on that floor. It is then that he spots something curious on the ground, another one of those exotic spiky fruits. Suspicious of the system's information, he shows the fruit to the new prisoners and demands to know its origin. One of the captured goblins tremble with fear under the young lord's serious gaze, who promises to remove him from the punishment list if he reveals the truth, and, through tears, the creatures confess that they secretly harvested it all from a giant tree. Hyman reassures them, saying that he only confiscated the fruit, with no intention of punishing them. Turning to the group of prisoners with the fruit still in hand, he orders 3 goblins to step forward, which they promptly do out of respect for the new lord, and instructs them to patrol the forest before dawn, under the tense gaze of the other captives. The goblins mutter fearfully just at the mention of the place, and Hyman, noticing their fear, asks why. One prisoner reveals that there is a dangerous guardian hidden in the forest, so feared that no one who has ever encountered it has come back to tell the tale. Biting into the spiky fruit, the young man insists that even so, the place needs to be investigated. Frightened, the goblin asks if he will still be tortured, which sparks outrage among the small servants, who shout demanding the elimination of the prisoners. Hyman turns to face them and asks seriously what the real reason for their victory in the battle was, mocking whether they think they won because they were stronger or because they had a superior army. He makes it clear that it was all just luck, and that they need to prepare much more for the next confrontation, finally admitting that the torture threat was nothing more than a bluff, since there is more important work to be done. Reinforcing that planning is the key to survival, he orders everyone to resume their tasks. Meanwhile, night falls over a dense and mysterious forest. 3 goblin scouts advance stealthily among the trees, spears in hand, until a brightly winged insect lands on the foot of one of them, drawing a small yelp of surprise because of the tickling, immediately scolded by his companion, who reminds him of Hyman's order: only observe without touching anything. The 3 continue crawling with extreme care through the woods, until one of them taps the other on the back, pointing to the high branches of a tree, where, stuck right at the top of the trunk, several giant spiky fruits appear. The scout freezes, paralyzed with pure astonishment. As they approach to observe better, the 3 notice shiny threads resembling spider webs connecting each of the fruits. One of the companions quickly covers the frightened goblin's mouth to prevent any noise. The entire tree is wrapped in a magical and gleaming web, intertwined with the fruits. Swallowing hard at realizing the gravity of the situation, the little one lowers his gaze and tries to remain in absolute silence. Suddenly, one of them notices dark puddles scattered across the ground and calls his companion in an uncertain tone. Curious, the scout touches the viscous substance with his fingers and, upon raising his hand, realizes it is fresh blood, still sticky. The group is horrified by this discovery, and the trio's leader orders an immediate retreat. The 3 begin to drag themselves backwards, trying to make no noise. But one of them is caught by surprise by a thin, shiny bluish thread, which lifts him into the air in seconds, leaving the other 2 in total shock. A second beam of light cuts through the darkness toward the scout who had remained on the ground. Back at the camp, one of the survivors reports what happened, terrified. Hyman asks if that path really leads to a desert, and the goblins, confused, just repeat the word without really understanding its meaning, until he remembers them mentioning a land covered in sand, and the creature confirms it excitedly. Exhausted from the effort it took to extract that single piece of information, he discovers, through the map, that the way to the desert goes past a hill, a river, and a forest. At least he now has a more detailed map in hand. That's when a desperate scream interrupts him. Two scouts come running, screaming, and collapse exhausted before him. Worried, Hyman asks what happened and where the third member of the group is. Amid tears, the goblin tells him that their companion was dragged upward and disappeared. Shocked, since he had asked everyone to be extra careful, the leader removes from the survivor's body a shiny and extremely sticky thread, demanding explanations while the servant tries, in silence, to process the weight of what happened. A cold sweat begins to run down the young man's face as he realizes the real danger lurking around the group. The webs in the trees, the indestructible threads, the deep cuts, everything points to giant spiders that dominate that part of the forest. Facing them would be a suicide capable of decimating his warriors. After a heavy sigh, feeling the weight of deciding the next step, Hyman takes off his suit jacket, accepting that he never had the luxury of choosing the easy path. He turns to the goblins and orders them to prepare the equipment. Their destination now is the forest. The group advances toward the darkness covered in shiny webs, which form true sinister tunnels along the treetops. Suddenly, a sharp fang sinks into the arm of an unsuspecting goblin. The monstrous creature emerges from the shadows with violence, while the giant spider, with gleaming eyes, slides down its own threads ready to claim more victims. Meanwhile, Hyman continues leading the rest of the group cautiously along the dark trail, the small servants watching the surroundings in tense silence. With his arms crossed, observing the treetops with redoubled attention, he taps his foot impatiently upon realizing that they have finally reached the edge of the forest. Intrigued that he hadn't spotted a single spider during the entire journey. In the background, one of the goblins chews a tough piece of dry leather in an attempt to deceive his hunger, and is promptly scolded by an irritated companion. Hyman knows very well that rationing that little bit of food won't sustain them for long. Trying to tear a web with his own teeth without success, the thread is too strong, he notices, out of the corner of his eye, the goblin hatchling with the red bandana passing furtively behind him. Questioned about what he thought he was doing out there, the little one trembles with fear, and the leader orders him to go back inside immediately, warning that this is no time for adventures, and asking the others to keep an eye on the runaway. A lightning bolt cuts through the dark clouds, announcing the arrival of a violent storm, and the thunderclap startles everyone. Heavy drops begin to batter the dry soil of that demonic territory, and under the torrential rain, Hyman, drenched and intrigued, points to a nearby cave and orders immediate shelter, lamenting the discovery that even the rain seems sharp in that kingdom. With water running down his face, he narrows his eyes thoughtfully until he has a flash of insight. He examines the spider thread under the rain and realizes amazed that the water is gradually dissolving the resistance of that sticky material. Still testing the idea without total success, he runs into the cave and asks if everyone is already sheltered, warning that they will wait there until the storm passes. The small servants murmur among themselves, visibly distressed, until one of them approaches tensely to reveal, with his teeth clenched in fear, that one of their companions has disappeared. Shocked, Hyman asks if they really checked the camp thoroughly, and begins counting the goblins one by one in the darkness, until he realizes furiously that the missing one is precisely the stubborn hatchling with the red bandana, who had the audacity to go out alone. Stomping his foot on the ground, he wonders if that creature has lost his mind, and even considers sending a search party, an idea he quickly discards, knowing that his servants would not have the necessary caution to escape the webs. With the rain still battering the stone entrance and the atmosphere increasingly tense, Hyman decides to act alone, certain that the little one cannot have gone very far. He grabs one of the scouts' wooden spears and walks toward the exit, ignoring the worried appeals of the servants, ordering firmly that everyone stay there until his return. He takes the first step into the mud under the heavy rain, admitting to himself the fear of facing such an unknown place alone, but remembering that a leader's responsibility is precisely to face danger head-on. Focused in the darkness, he freezes upon noticing small footprints marked in the mud, revealing exactly the path the hatchling followed. Following the trail with the spear in hand, a deafening lightning bolt rips through the sky, but he continues the search until he narrows his eyes at an unusual glow coming from a clearing ahead. Shocked, he realizes it is the beginning of a fire in the middle of the dense woods and quickens his pace, stepping on water mixed with sparks, running desperately to rescue the small servant. The small goblin hatchling appears crying among the flames upon seeing his master approach, rolling across the wet ground, screaming in pain with his rear catching fire from the sparks. Haman throws himself to the ground to restrain the creature, ignoring the heat of the flames, holding him firmly while he struggles, and even hits him in the face in despair. With agility, he presses the burnt part into a puddle of water, putting out the fire instantly. The little one collapses exhausted in the mud, crying softly with his singed tail. Irritated, he demands to know why the hatchling went alone in such a dangerous place. Amid sobs, the creature reveals that his younger brother cried for hunger every day, begging for food, and that was why he risked his life in the forest in search of the fruits. Kneeling before him, Haman states firmly that his brother's hunger did not justify such recklessness. But then he stops, struck by a mental flash at what he had just witnessed. For the first time since he arrived in that kingdom, he saw fire up close. Taking off his drenched suit jacket, he begins to devise a bold plan, tearing a piece of fabric from the soaked formal clothes with his own teeth. With the cloth in hand, he prepares to put his new survival idea into practice. Back at the cave, the other goblins clutch their spears, torn between the fear of a scolding and the desire to rescue their master, until a strange noise in the woods startles them. Even trembling with fear in the darkness, they decide they need to act and go running barefoot through the cold mud in search of their master. In the distance, amid the darkness of the woods, the small warriors spot an intense and strange orange glow. As they approach, they scream in fright upon coming face to face with an immense wall of fire consuming the bushes around them. One of the scouts breaks into cold sweat, not understanding that hot energy shining before him, as the flames illuminate the darkness of that shadowy forest for the first time. Overcome with shock at the intense heat, the little monster grinds his teeth and collapses to his knees in the mud, without the strength to remain standing. Before that unbelievable scene, all the goblins are overcome by deep respect and admiration. The reflection of the flames in their eyes seems like something almost divine, something they had never witnessed before. With the torch held high, Haman appears before the servants like a true deity of that shadowy kingdom, his serious and imposing gaze fascinating everyone. One of the little ones screams with relief upon seeing his master safe and sound amid the storm. Surprised to find them kneeling, Haman asks what they are doing there, remembering that he had told them to wait in the cave, but realizing that this in fact makes his plan much easier. Taking a piece of the resistant web from his pocket, he decides to perform a test before everyone. Upon bringing the shiny thread close to the torch's flame, the supposedly indestructible line burns and disintegrates instantly. The goblins explode in shouts of pure joy upon seeing the feared enemy web destroyed so easily. Satisfied, the leader confirms that his theory was correct, acknowledging that all of this was only possible thanks to the courage of the little runaway. Kneeling down affectionately before the hatchling, he decides that the time has come to give him a real name, announcing that from then on, the creature will be known as Kim Prometheus, or simply Kimpro for short. Stroking the little one's head, he explains that the name is a tribute for having brought fire to the group. In that very instant, a blue system panel appears, confirming that the master has officially named a citizen of his territory for the first time, while a golden energy envelops Kimpro and his new name floats shining above his head. The little goblin's large yellow eyes widen, overtaken by an intense and mysterious magical energy as he floats in the air in the middle of an evolution process before the astonished gazes of everyone. Completely confused and open-mouthed, Haman watches the scene without fully understanding what is happening, until Kimpro lands softly on the ground and the energy gradually dissipates around him. Curious, the leader examines the small servant, trying to identify any change in his appearance, while the rest of the goblins celebrate, shouting the new name in chorus and turning the woods into a true party. But Haman's gaze soon becomes serious again. He knows that the greater danger has not yet been dealt with. Drawing the group's attention, he warns that it is not time to celebrate and asks everyone to come closer, as he intends to distribute one torch to each of them. With a confident smile, holding the fire firmly in his hands, he declares that their turn to launch a counterattack has finally come.